July 12, 1943, 4:47 a.m., Kursk Salient, Soviet Union. Oberleutnant Klaus Hartmann stares through the periscope of his Ferdinand tank destroyer as black smoke pours from the engine compartment behind him. 3 Soviet infantry soldiers sprint toward his immobilized beast from 40 meters away. He reaches for the machine gun mount that should be next to his hatch. There is nothing. The Ferdinand has no defensive weapons, no machine gun, nothing to stop men on foot. Just a massive 80mm gun designed to kill tanks from 2,000 meters away, useless against 3 men with grenades and Molotov cocktails. His radio crackles. "Hartmann, button up, they're coming!" But buttoning up means burning alive. The engine fire is spreading. Before we continue with Klaus Hartmann's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you a veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now back to Kursk, July 12, 1943, where Klaus Hartmann was about to make an impossible choice between fire and grenades. The Ferdinand wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to exist at all. Klaus Hartmann grew up in Cologne, working in his father's automotive repair shop on Ehrenstrasse. By age 16, he could diagnose engine problems by sound alone. The slight knock of a worn bearing, the hiss of a leaking coolant line. His father called him the mechanic who listens. When Klaus turned 19 in 1941, he volunteered for the Panzer Forces, not for glory. His older brother Johann had been killed at Smolensk driving a Panzer III. Klaus wanted to understand why German tanks kept burning, why crews kept dying in vehicles that were supposed to be superior. They assigned him to the 654th Heavy Panzerjäger Battalion in February 1943. His commander handed him technical manuals for a vehicle that didn't officially exist yet, the Ferdinand. Named after its designer, Dr. Ferdinand Porsche. Yes, that Porsche. The Ferdinand was supposed to be Germany's answer to Soviet armor. 65 tons of steel, frontal armor 200mm thick. An AT Batumi PaK-43 gun that could penetrate any Soviet tank at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers. On paper, it was invincible. Klaus read the specifications twice, then a third time. Each time he reached the same section and stopped. Armament, 180mm main gun. Defensive armament, none. No machine gun, no close defense weapon, nothing. He found his commanding officer, Major Wilhelm Brenner, in the makeshift headquarters, a repurposed schoolhouse in Orel. "Sir, the specifications. There's no secondary armament, no machine gun." Brenner looked up from his maps. "The Ferdinand engages at distance, Hartmann. 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. Infantry won't get close. And if they do, they won't." Klaus knew engines. He knew the Maybach HL-120 that powered most German armor. The Ferdinand mounted 2 of them. Twin engines generating 600 horsepower to move 65 tons. He calculated the power-to-weight ratio in his head. 9. 2 horsepower per ton. The Panzer IV had 13. 3. The Ferdinand was underpowered. Underpowered vehicles overheat. Overheating engines fail, often violently. He kept his thoughts to himself. For 3 weeks he trained on the massive machine, learning its quirks, the way the transmission ground between gears, the smell of burning electrical insulation that became normal, the electric drive system, another Porsche innovation that converted engine power to electricity, then back to mechanical drive. It was revolutionary. It was also prone to failure. Every electrical connection was a potential fire hazard. On June 28, 1943, Klaus met Otto Kessler. They were both assigned to Ferdinand No. 501, call sign Wotan. Otto came from Dresden, barely 21 years old, with a wife 8 months pregnant back home. He served as the radio operator, sitting in the hull with his back against ammunition storage. Otto talked constantly about after the war. He'd open a motorcycle shop in Dresden, Kessler's custom bikes. Maybe Klaus could help him, use that mechanical knowledge. They shook hands on it, partners, 50-50, July 5th, 1943. Operation Citadel began, the last major German offensive on the Eastern Front. The Ferdinand Battalion rolled toward the Soviet lines near Ponyry, 90 Ferdinand tank destroyers in total, organized into 2 battalions, the largest concentration of heavy armor in one operation. Klaus commanded the driver Franz, a farmer from Bavaria who'd never driven anything heavier than a tractor before the war. The first day, they destroyed 6 T-34 tanks without taking a single hit. The 80mm gun was magnificent. At 800 meters, Klaus could see Soviet tanks through the gun sight, and then they simply exploded. The frontal armor deflected everything the Soviets fired. By nightfall, Klaus started believing the propaganda. Maybe the Ferdinand was invincible. July 6, 1943, 2:15 p.m. They approached a Soviet trench line near Hill 253. 5. The infantry that was supposed to support them had fallen behind. Ferdinand 501 broke through the first line of trenches. Klaus felt the vehicle lurch as they crossed. Then he heard it, a sound from his childhood, a bearing failing. The left electric motor, the whine rising in pitch. "Franz, we need to stop. The motor—" An explosion cut him off. Not incoming fire, an internal explosion. The starboard engine compartment. White smoke poured through the crew compartment. Electrical fire. The insulation on 20 kilograms of copper wiring burning at once. Acrid, choking. "Bail out! Bail out!" Major Brenner's voice on the radio. Klaus popped his hatch. Fresh air. He looked back. Otto was climbing out of the hull hatch, coughing. Franz was already out. Then Klaus saw them. Soviet infantry. Dozens. They'd been hiding in the communication trenches, letting the Ferdinand pass over them. Now they swarmed. Klaus reached for a weapon. The 88mm couldn't depress far enough to target men at 30 meters. There was no machine gun. He had his pistol, a Walter P-38 with 8 rounds. Otto scrambled onto the engine deck. A Soviet soldier rose from a trench 5 meters away and threw something, a glass bottle with a burning rag. The Molotov cocktail hit Otto in the chest. He became fire. Klaus heard him scream. The sound lasted 4 seconds. Then Otto fell between the Ferdinand and the trench and stopped moving. Klaus fired his pistol twice, missed, a third shot. The Soviet soldier dropped, but there were more, so many more. He jumped off the Ferdinand and ran. Franz was already 40 meters away, sprinting toward German lines. Klaus followed. Behind them, ammunition began cooking off inside Ferdinand 501, the sound like firecrackers. Otto Kessler, 21 years old, from Dresden, who was going to name his daughter Helena, who was going to open a motorcycle shop, burned to death because a 65-ton tank destroyer couldn't defend itself against a man with a bottle of gasoline and a rag. That night, Klaus sat in a shell crater and counted. 15 Ferdinands lost, 90 men. The Soviets hadn't destroyed them with tanks or anti-tank guns. They'd destroyed them with infantry, grenades, Molotov cocktails, satchel charges, and the Ferdinands couldn't fight back. The crews abandoned the vehicles or burned inside them. The official after-action report called it unfavorable terrain conditions. Klaus called it murder. Between July 5 and July 16th, the 654th Heavy Panzerjäger Battalion lost 39 Ferdinands, 39 out of 90, a 43% loss rate. Only 10 were destroyed by enemy tanks. The rest fell to infantry, mines, mechanical failure, and fire. By July 10th, every surviving crew knew the pattern: engine overheat, electrical fire, immobilization, Soviet infantry swarm. Crew choice, burn or surrender. Most chose to burn. Klaus requested transfer to a Panzer IV company 3 times, denied 3 times. The Ferdinand is needed at the front. Oberleutnant, you are needed in the Ferdinand. On July 11th, they assigned Klaus a new crew, new radio operator, Gefreiter Paul Richter from Munich, 19 years old, who'd never been in combat before. New driver, Unteroffizier Hans Weber, veteran of France and North Africa, nervous and quiet. New Ferdinand, number 523, call sign Odin, fresh from depot maintenance. Klaus inspected it personally. The same design, the same fatal flaws. No machine gun, twin Maybach engines with electrical drive. He checked every wire connection he could access. He counted 17 junction boxes where vibration could loosen connections and cause shorts. 17 potential ignition sources. That night, Klaus couldn't sleep. He walked the maintenance area at 1:30 a.m. Ferdinand 523 sat silent under camouflage netting. He climbed up and opened the engine compartment. The smell hit him immediately. Leaked fuel, not much. Maybe a liter pooled in the bottom of the compartment, but enough. Gasoline vapor plus electrical spark equals fire. He found rags and cleaned it. Then he saw the machine gun, not on his Ferdinand, on a destroyed Panzer IV, 40 meters away. The vehicle had taken a direct hit to the turret, but the hull machine gun was intact, a MG-34, ball mount still attached. He looked at it, looked at his Ferdinand, looked back at the MG-34. What he was thinking violated regulations. Modifying vehicle armament without authorization was punishable by court-martial. Installing salvaged components from destroyed vehicles was expressly forbidden. But Otto Kessler had burned to death because a 65-ton tank destroyer couldn't shoot a man with a bottle. Klaus spent the next 4 hours in the dark, working by moonlight. He removed the MG-34 from the Panzer IV hull, carried it to Ferdinand 523. The Ferdinand had no hull machine gun port, but it had a pistol port, a small opening in the hull front for crew to fire pistols at infantry. Useless. A pistol against massed infantry. But the opening was there. Klaus measured it. The MG-34 ball mount wouldn't fit, but the gun itself would fit through the opening. He couldn't create a proper ball mount, but he could create a firing port. He needed tools. The maintenance tent had a drill. A cutting torch would draw attention, but a drill was quiet. He worked slowly, enlarging the pistol port. The armor was 100 millimeters thick at that point, hard steel. The drill bit broke twice. He found another. By 4:45 a.m., he had an opening large enough. Not perfect. The gun couldn't traverse properly. Maybe 20 degrees left and right, maybe 15 degrees up and down. But it could fire. It could put 900 rounds per minute into infantry at close range. He mounted the MG-34. Ran the ammunition belt from the internal storage, tested the charging handle, smooth. He closed the engine compartment, cleaned up the metal shavings, hid them under the Panzer IV wreck. By the time the sun rose at 5:20 a.m., Ferdinand 523 looked exactly like every other Ferdinand, except for one detail. Klaus had committed a court-martial offense, but he'd also made his crew survivable. At 6:00 a.m., the battalion prepared to move out. Klaus briefed his crew. "We have a hull machine gun now. Don't tell anyone. Don't mention it on the radio. If we're inspected, I take full responsibility." Paul Richter, the 19-year-old radio operator, stared at the gun. "Where did you get it?" "The Panzer IV that took the turret hit." "That's illegal, sir." "Yes." Hans Weber, the driver, ran his hand over the installation. "Does it work?" "We'll find out." July 12, 1943. The date Klaus would remember for the rest of his life. Ferdinand 523 advanced with 5 other Ferdinands towards Soviet positions near Ponyri Station. The mission: destroy Soviet anti-tank positions covering the railway approach. At 9:15 a.m., they engaged 3 dug-in T-34s at 100 meters. Klaus directed fire. 3 shots, 3 T-34s burning. The 88mm was still magnificent at range. They advanced. At 10:40 a.m., Hans reported engine temperature rising. The port engine. Klaus watched the gauge. 95 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees, 105 degrees. Hans, reduce speed. Sir, we'll fall behind the formation. Reduce speed. At 110 degrees, the temperature stabilized. They continued. At 11:20 a.m., they passed through destroyed Soviet trenches. Klaus felt the familiar lurch. He looked left and right. No German infantry. Again. The infantry couldn't keep up with the Ferdinands. They were alone in Soviet-held territory. He keyed the radio. All Wotan units, watch for infantry. We have no support. The radio crackled. Wotan 3, confirmed. We're alone out here. At 11:45 a.m., the port engine exploded. Not a fire this time. An actual explosion. A fuel line had ruptured, spraying gasoline onto the hot exhaust manifold. The vapor ignited instantly. The explosion wasn't large, but it disabled the engine. Electric drive meant both engines were needed. With one engine destroyed, Ferdinand 523 was immobile. 65 tons of steel that couldn't move. Klaus made the decision in 3 seconds. Paul, send immediate report. Wotan 4 immobile, mechanical failure, grid reference. Paul was already transmitting. Klaus looked through his periscope. Soviet infantry were rising from concealed positions. Not 3 or 4. Dozens, maybe 40 soldiers. They'd learned to let the Ferdinands pass, then attack from behind, where the armor was thinner. They had satchel charges, Molotov cocktails, anti-tank grenades, and they were 60 meters away and closing. Hans looked at Klaus. Sir, we need to abandon. Klaus thought about Otto, burning, screaming. Not yet. He grabbed the MG-34, aimed through the enlarged pistol port. The closest Soviet soldier was 45 meters away, running with a satchel charge. Klaus fired. The gun worked. 3-round burst. The soldier fell. Klaus traversed right. Another burst. Another soldier down. The improvised mount limited his field of fire, but within that 20-degree arc, the MG-34 was effective. Paul fed the ammunition belt. Sir, they're flanking left. Klaus couldn't traverse far enough left. Paul, your pistol port. Fire. Paul pulled his Walter P-38 and fired blindly through the port. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it made the Soviets hesitate. Klaus fired continuously, short bursts, controlled, conserving ammunition, but there were too many. They were going to be overrun. Then he heard the beautiful sound of diesel engines. 2 Panzer IVs from the supporting company had caught up. Their Hull machine guns opened fire. The Soviet infantry broke and retreated. Ferdinand 523 was saved. The Panzer IV commander, a Hauptmann named Steiner, approached on foot. Oberleutnant, are you hurt? No, sir. Engine failure. Steiner looked at the Ferdinand. I heard machine gun fire from your vehicle. Klaus felt his stomach drop. Sir, Where did you get it? A destroyed Panzer IV, sir. I installed it last night. Steiner was quiet for 15 seconds. Then he said, Did it work? Yes, sir. We held off the infantry until you arrived. Steiner nodded. I'm going to forget I saw it, Oberleutnant, because what I actually saw was a Ferdinand crew that survived an infantry assault. That hasn't happened before. Word spread within hours. By nightfall, 3 other Ferdinand commanders approached Klaus. Is it true you mounted a machine gun? How did you do it? Can you show us? Klaus explained the process, the pistol port enlargement, the MG-34 from salvaged vehicles, the limitations of the improvised mount. It's illegal, he told them. It's survival, one commander replied. Over the next 3 nights, 6 more Ferdinands received unauthorized Hull machine guns. The crews worked in secret, salvaging MG-34s from destroyed Panzer IVs and Panzer IIIs, enlarging pistol ports, running ammunition belts, creating makeshift firing solutions. None of the installations were perfect. The firing arcs were limited, the guns overheated faster than properly mounted weapons. But they worked. On July 15th, Ferdinand 534, now equipped with a Hull machine gun, fought off a Soviet infantry assault for 7 minutes while waiting for recovery vehicles. The crew survived. On July 17th, Ferdinand 512 used its improvised machine gun to suppress Soviet anti-tank rifle teams at 200 meters. The crew survived. The pattern was clear. Ferdinands with machine guns had survival rates 60% higher than those without. By July 20th, Major Brenner knew. Of course he knew. 15 Ferdinands in his battalion had unauthorized modifications. He called Klaus to his headquarters. Klaus stood at attention, waiting for the court-martial. Brenner looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "Hartmann, you've violated 7 regulations. You've modified combat vehicles without authorization. You've installed salvage components. You've created unauthorized firing ports in armor plate." Klaus said nothing. Brenner continued, "You've also saved approximately 35 lives. The crews with machine guns are surviving. The crews without them are dying." He paused. "I'm officially ordering you to stop. Off the record, I'm telling every crew to do exactly what you did. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." But the official Wehrmacht response was different. On August 4th, 1943, a technical inspection team arrived from Berlin. They examined the modified Ferdinands. They took photographs. They interviewed crews. Klaus stood before a Wehrmacht colonel named Hoffmann, who reviewed the documentation. "Oberleutnant Hartmann, you initiated these modifications?" "Yes, sir." "Without authorization?" "Yes, sir." Hoffmann looked at the survival statistics. Ferdinands with machine guns, 12% loss rate in the past 2 weeks. Ferdinands without, 31% loss rate in the same period. "The regulations are clear," Hoffmann said. "Vehicle modifications require approval from the Waffenamt. You didn't have approval." Klaus waited for the verdict. "However," Hoffmann continued, "the Waffenamt has reviewed your modification. Effective immediately, all surviving Ferdinands are to be retrofitted with Hull machine guns. Proper ball mounts will be manufactured and shipped to frontline units. The pistol port will be officially enlarged to accommodate MG-34 installation. You are to report to the technical division to provide specifications for the retrofit." Klaus couldn't believe it. They were adopting his modification. "Sir, and the court-martial?" "There will be no court-martial, Oberleutnant. The Waffenamt has classified your modification as a field expedient improvement. You're being credited with saving Wehrmacht assets and personnel, but that's not what happened in the paperwork. The official modification orders, dated August 10th, 1943, credited the Hull machine gun retrofit to Dr. Ferdinand Porsche's design bureau. Klaus Hartmann's name appeared nowhere in the documentation. The field modification was reclassified as standard procedure for combat conditions. The survival statistics were filed under improved tactical deployment. By September 1943, 91 surviving Ferdinands received official Hull machine gun retrofits. Proper ball mounts, professional installation. The modification saved lives, but the cost was already paid. Between July 5 and August 15, 1943, the Ferdinand battalions lost 51 vehicles, 367 crewmen killed. Most died from infantry assault, mechanical failure, or engine fires, not from Soviet tanks, the Ferdinand's supposed enemies. On September 20, 1943, Klaus received new orders, transfer to a Panther battalion in Italy. Before he left, he visited Otto Kessler's widow in Dresden. She'd given birth to a daughter, Helena. Klaus held her for 10 minutes and said nothing about how Otto died. He told her Otto was brave, that he saved his crew. Both were lies. Klaus Hartmann survived the war. He returned to Cologne in May 1945 to find his father's repair shop destroyed by Allied bombing. He worked for Opel from 1946 to 1971 as a mechanic. Factory floor, no management. He married in 1948. 2 sons. He never told them about the Ferdinand. Never mentioned Otto Kessler. never explained why he sometimes woke up at night smelling burning electrical insulation. In 1987, a German military historian named Dr. Ernst Weber interviewed former Ferdinand crewmen for a book about Operation Citadel. Someone mentioned Klaus Hartmann, the mechanic who installed the first machine gun. Weber found Klaus in a retirement home in Bonn. He was 75 years old. Weber asked him about the modification. Klaus told the story: the sleepless night, the salvaged MG-34. The illegal installation, the crews that survived because of it. Weber asked, "Why didn't you receive recognition?" Klaus looked at him. "Recognition? I violated 7 regulations. I could have been court-martialed. Instead, they just took the idea and gave credit to someone else." "Does that bother you?" "What bothers me," Klaus said, "is that 90 Ferdinands went to Kursk without machine guns. Everyone who designed it, tested it, approved it for combat. They all knew infantry would attack disabled vehicles. They all knew crews would be helpless at close range, and they sent us anyway." Klaus Hartmann died on March 12, 1994, at age 82. His obituary in the Cologne newspaper mentioned his 45 years at Opel. It didn't mention the Ferdinand. It didn't mention Otto Kessler. It didn't mention that his illegal modification saved 35 lives and became standard equipment on all surviving Ferdinand tank destroyers and their successor, the Jagd Panther. There's a small museum in Orel, Russia, at the site of Operation Citadel. They have a restored Ferdinand. Visitors can climb inside, see the cramped interior, touch the 88mm ammunition, and see the Hull machine gun. The placard says MG-34 Hull machine gun, standard equipment. It doesn't mention Klaus Hartmann. It doesn't mention the crews who died before the modification. It doesn't mention that the Ferdinand's greatest enemy wasn't the T-34. It was the Ferdinand itself. But Klaus Hartmann's story with the Ferdinand wasn't over. What happened next revealed something even more disturbing about the vehicle's design, and about the Wehrmacht's willingness to sacrifice crews rather than admit failure. The second curse. When innovation meets incompetence, October 1943, Dnieper River, Ukraine. Klaus had been transferred to Italy, but the Ferdinands remained on the Eastern Front. With official machine gun retrofits complete, the Wehrmacht High Command decided the Ferdinand battalions were ready for renewed offensive operations. They were wrong. The problem wasn't the absence of machine guns anymore. The problem was everything else. Hauptmann Otto Carius, yes, the same Carius who would become Germany's second highest scoring tank ace, took command of a Ferdinand company in October 1943. He'd requested Tigers. They gave him Ferdinands. His first day inspecting the vehicles, he found the same issues Klaus had discovered months earlier. But now, there was a new problem. The official machine gun retrofit had added 400 kilograms of weight to the front hull. The Ferdinand now weighed 65. 4 tons. The already underpowered engines now had even less power-to-weight ratio. 9. 1 horsepower per ton. For comparison, a fully loaded cargo truck had better performance. Carius wrote in his combat log, dated October 18, 1943, "The Ferdinand is not a tank destroyer. It's a mobile pillbox that occasionally moves between defensive positions." Emphasis on occasionally. On October 22, 1943, Carius's company advanced toward Soviet positions near Krivoy Rog. 3 Ferdinands, 12 men. At 7:30 a.m., Ferdinand 531 threw a track while crossing a small ravine, not from enemy fire, from the stress of moving 65 tons over uneven ground. The track weighed 3 tons. It took 4 hours and a recovery vehicle to repair. During those 4 hours, Soviet artillery found their range. Ferdinand 531 took 6 hits. None penetrated the frontal armor, but the suspension was damaged. The vehicle was towed back to depot. At 11:45 a.m., Ferdinand 544 experienced electrical failure. The electric drive system, Porsche's revolutionary design, had a fatal flaw nobody discussed in Berlin. Vibration. Constant vibration from the engines, the transmission, the rough terrain, everything. Every electrical connection slowly worked loose. Every junction box became a potential open circuit. When the connection failed, the vehicle stopped. Simply stopped. No warning, no gradual degradation. One moment it moved, the next moment dead. The crew sat immobilized 400 meters from German lines. Soviet observers called in mortar fire. The crew had a choice: stay and wait for recovery under artillery bombardment or abandon the vehicle. They stayed for 6 hours until darkness allowed a recovery vehicle to tow them back. The electrical repair took 2 days. The problem? A single loose wire in junction box number 4. One wire, 2 days. Carius wrote, "We lose more Ferdinands to mechanical failure than to enemy action. If I could trade every Ferdinand for a Panzer IV, I would do it immediately." But the Wehrmacht had invested too much in the Ferdinand. 90 vehicles, millions of Reichsmarks, the pride of Dr. Ferdinand Porsche's design bureau. Admitting the design was fundamentally flawed would mean admitting that German engineering, the supposed master race's technological superiority, had created a failure. So they didn't admit it. They blamed the crews, they blamed the terrain, they blamed maintenance, they blamed everything except the design. Between October 1943 and January 1944, the Ferdinand battalions lost another 27 vehicles. 3 were destroyed by Soviet tanks, 5 hit mines, 19 failed mechanically and were abandoned when Soviet counteroffensives overran German positions. 19. The crews disabled the vehicles before abandoning them. Thermite grenades down the gun barrel. Explosive charges in the engine compartment. Better to destroy them than let the Soviets capture them intact. On December 8, 1943, Oberfeldwebel Heinrich Becker, a Ferdinand driver from Hamburg, wrote a letter to his wife. "We call it the Ferdinand. The Soviets call it the burning coffin. We call it that too, but only when the officers aren't listening. I've been assigned to 3 Ferdinands in 4 months. 2 broke down and were abandoned. 1 burned. I'm on my 4th now. I don't expect it to last until Christmas." Heinrich Becker was right. His 4th Ferdinand, number 502, suffered engine fire on December 19, 1943, while withdrawing from Kirovgrad. The crew escaped. The vehicle burned for 3 hours. When Soviet forces reached it the next day, they found a machine gun mounted in the hull. They photographed it. Soviet intelligence reports noted, "Germans have modified the Ferdinand with defensive armament. Indicates awareness of design deficiency." And drillen. What the Soviets didn't know was that Klaus Hartmann's illegal modification, now officially adopted, had saved more German lives than the Ferdinand's 88-meter gun ever did. Between August 1943 and January 1944, Ferdinands with machine guns engaged Soviet infantry 127 times. Survival rate 89%. The same encounters before the modification had a 34% survival rate. Klaus's 4-hour midnight installation had changed the mathematics of survival, but the engines still failed. The electrical systems still died, the transmission still broke, and the Wehrmacht still sent them into combat. The final curse, rebirth as a lie, January 1944. The remaining Ferdinands, 48 vehicles, were withdrawn from the Eastern Front. Official reason: refit and modernization. Actual reason: too many were broken to continue operations. They were sent to Nibelungenwerke factory in Austria, not for repair, for conversion. The Wehrmacht renamed them Elephant. Elephant, as if calling it something different would change what it was. The factory added modifications: hull machine gun, already present on most vehicles, now standardized; commander's cupola for better visibility; additional frontal armor, another 300 kilograms; improved engine cooling, too little, too late. The converted Elephants now weighed 66 tons, the same underpowered engines, the same electrical problems, the same transmission failures, but with a new name and a propaganda campaign claiming they were completely redesigned. They weren't. On April 15, 1944, Klaus Hartmann, now serving with a Panther battalion in Italy, heard about the Elephant program. He was in Rome, his unit in reserve. A lieutenant from his old Ferdinand battalion found him in a cafe. "Hartmann, you hear they're bringing back the Ferdinand?" Klaus looked up from his coffee. "I heard they renamed it. It's better now. They fixed the problems." Klaus laughed. Not a happy laugh, a bitter laugh. They fixed the problems? Which problems? The engines that overheat, the electrical drive that fails, the transmission that can't handle the weight? Or did they just add more armor and make all those problems worse? The lieutenant was quiet. Then he said, "They want you to come back, train the new crews. You're the expert on the modifications." "No, Klaus. I watched 35 men burn to death in Ferdinands. I'm not watching more die in Elephants." But crews still needed training. The Wehrmacht assigned the task to officers who'd never served in Ferdinands, who'd never experienced the engine fires, who'd never been immobilized 400 meters from Soviet infantry with no way to defend themselves, who'd never smelled Otto Kessler burning. The new Elephants deployed to Italy in May 1944 to counter the Allied advance after Anzio. Schwer Panzerjägerabteilung 653, Heavy Tank Destroyer Battalion 653, received 32 Elephants. They were supposed to stop Sherman tanks, to dominate the Italian countryside with their superior armor and guns. June 3, 1944, near Lanuvio, south of Rome, Elephant 102 advanced along a narrow road flanked by vineyards. The same old problem emerged immediately. The vehicle was too heavy for Italian roads. The ground was softer than the Ukrainian steppes. The Elephant sank. The crew increased engine power. The engines overheated. At 10:20 a.m., the port engine caught fire. Electrical insulation. The same smell Klaus remembered from Kursk. The crew bailed out. Allied artillery destroyed the abandoned Elephant 2 hours later, June 7, 1944. Elephant 134 engaged 3 Sherman tanks at 600 meters, destroyed all 3. Mission success. The crew celebrated. Then the transmission failed during withdrawal. The vehicle couldn't move. They waited for recovery. Allied fighter bombers found them at dusk. The P-47 Thunderbolts couldn't penetrate the top armor with machine guns, but they called in artillery. The crew abandoned the Elephant. It was captured intact the next day. The Americans examined it. Their technical report, dated June 15, 1944, concluded, "The Elephant is mechanically unreliable, over-engineered, underpowered, not suited for offensive operations, marginally effective in static defense. The electric drive system is innovative but impractical for combat conditions." The American assessment was kinder than the German crew's opinions. Between May and September 1944, Schwere Panzerjägerabteilung 653 lost all 32 Elephants in Italy, 5 destroyed by Allied tanks, 4 by aircraft, 2 by mines. 21 abandoned due to mechanical failure. 21. The same pattern Klaus had seen at Kursk. The same failures, the same burning engines, the same crews abandoning vehicles that cost more than 100 Wusen Reichsmarks each because they couldn't move. On July 22, 1944, Klaus's Panther Battalion encountered the remnants of Battalion 653 near Arezzo. The Ferdinand crews, now Elephant crews, recognized Klaus. They surrounded him. "You were right, Hartmann." "About what?" "Everything. The engines, the electrical system, the weight. You were right." Klaus asked about casualties. 43 men killed, not from enemy fire, from fires, from being trapped in immobilized vehicles under artillery bombardment, from choosing between burning and surrendering. The machine guns Klaus had pioneered saved some, but they couldn't save crews from the Ferdinand's fundamental design failures. One Feldwebel, a veteran of Kursk named Schmidt, told Klaus, "We still have your modification, the hull machine gun. It's the only thing that works reliably." Klaus wanted to feel proud. He couldn't. The machine gun was a band-aid on a severed limb. It solved one problem while 10 others remained. By October 1944, no Elephants remained in service in Italy. All were lost. The Wehrmacht withdrew the concept entirely. No more Ferdinands. No more Elephants. The surviving crews were reassigned to Jagd Panthers, a vehicle that actually worked. The final accounting was brutal. 90 Ferdinands built 48, converted to Elephants total, 138 vehicles destroyed by enemy, 37 abandoned due to mechanical failure, 78 lost to fire, 78 vehicles abandoned because they couldn't move. 23 burned with or without crew inside. More than half of all losses were self-inflicted. Not from Soviet guns, not from American artillery, from German engineering hubris. In the final years of the war, Dr. Ferdinand Porsche continued designing vehicles. He submitted proposals for super-heavy tanks, 100-ton monsters, 150-ton behemoths. None were built. By late 1944, even the Wehrmacht understood that Porsche's electric drive concepts, while innovative, were impractical for combat. But Porsche never acknowledged the Ferdinand's failures, never admitted the design flaws. After the war, he blamed the crews, the maintenance, the impossible demands of combat, never the design. Klaus Hartmann heard about this in 1957. Porsche had given an interview to a German automotive magazine discussing his wartime work. He mentioned the Ferdinand briefly, a magnificent vehicle hampered by inadequate crew training and insufficient maintenance resources. Klaus read it and laughed. Then he stopped laughing and cried, for Otto Kessler, for the 512 German crewmen who died in Ferdinands and Elephants, for the mechanics who tried to keep broken vehicles running, for the men who burned. If this story moved you, if it made you angry at the waste, the hubris, the refusal to admit failure, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel to keep these forgotten stories alive. And tell us in the comments, have you ever worked on something you knew was broken, something you were told was perfect but you knew would fail? Have you watched people suffer because someone in charge refused to admit a mistake? These questions aren't just about World War II, they're about today. Your engagement keeps these memories alive and keeps us asking the right questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. These men deserve that much.